cattle. And why is that? A lot of that times is you know, we're trying to get them on there just to get that truck loaded, to get that truck out of there, and to do that stuff. One of the probably most insightful statements about loading that I heard is how they go on is how they come off. So think about that. How they go on is how they come off. And I messed around with this quite a bit, you know, just, you know, not loading semis, but, you know, on gooseneck loads and stuff. How I put those cattle on, if I put them on in a calm, low stress manner, they go up there, they stay there till I get that gate shut behind them. They're not hitting the end, turning around and wanting to come back off. Because, I mean, you've all seen that, where you got something that you get on there really fast, they hit the end of that, they spin around, and they're coming right through you before you can get that gate shut. If you can get them up there in a little lower stress manner, they'll go up there, they'll stay, close the gate, and do that. The second part is when you unload that load of cattle, they go up there calmly, they usually come off pretty calmly. You know, and again, that's just one of the things that I've seen. I think we're kind of near the end of the time. It's getting pretty warm, but I want to give you an opportunity. If you have any questions about stuff that you're having issues with handling, we've got a lot of brain power here that kind of can help answer any of those questions or whatever, or anything that I said that is just, you know, flat out lie or BS. I'm glad to try to defend it.
About in terms of why to take this approach, in my mind, is marketing is a lot of it. So, well, two things. So you want your job to go efficiently every year, and if your cattle know, you know, this is not going to be a big deal, they go through your system efficiently, that saves you time and money. But at the end of the day, just like being indicated, if they go on the truck hot, they come off the truck hot. You talk to feeders, and you can have a beautiful set of Angus cows from this ranch and a beautiful set of Angus cows from another ranch, similar locations, different management, and they know where those cattle come from based on the disposition of those cattle. And they also know those higher strung animals really affect efficiency, health, the whole 9 yards at the feeding level. And if your cattle are known to stay calm and are easy to handle, and they'll gain well, they'll do well, and hopefully you'll have a repeat customer from those feeders.
So related to that, the profitability, and thank you for reminding me, what happens when an animal gets stressed? You know, and Craig did a real nice job talking about it at another deal I was just at, but what happens when cattle get stressed? Hormonally, they increase their adrenaline and cortisol. That has scientifically, without a doubt, been shown to block the actions of antibiotics and vaccines. So how many dollars are we putting in these cattle in either these high-price antibiotics if we've got something sick, or just in vaccination? You know, a lot of times it's upwards of $15 to $20 in vaccinations that we're giving them at branding, right? You know, and some of these antibiotics are $400 or $500 a bottle. If that cortisol is blocking the action of that, as Bud Williams used to talk about, you just as well put it on the ground, because it's not going to be effective. And so even though, you know, you may, you know, I'm not approaching this strictly from I think it's the right thing to do. I'm approaching it from an economic standpoint, because I'm investing a lot in those cattle to do the right thing, to make sure that they have the proper health and immunity background when they go to someone else. And I want that to be effective. Because again, I want those repeat customers. I want those customers coming back. And so if I'm doing that in a lower stress manner, then I'm hopefully being effective. You know, we talk a little bit about processing branding calves, you know, calf tables versus roping and dragging. I think it all goes back to just like that tub versus a bud box thing. You know, what is least stressful? I've been to rope and drag brandings where I promise you that was probably the most stressful thing those calves would ever go through. You know, and especially when you have someone whose skill level is probably below where they think their skill level is. You know, and that's you know, and no offense to, I mean, I've been there. So, but I've also been to rope and drag brandings where I think that's the least stress, most effective way to process calves, where you can kind of go in there calmly, get them out, process them quick, they go right back. Versus a calf table. I mean, no, not a lot of cowboys really like using calf tables, but they're used effectively, and you don't have the human resources to do the rope and dragging deal, then that's how you have to do it. So I process, and this will probably ruin the last maybe little bit of credibility I had, but I process all of my calves in a chute because I have a part-time guy who's 74 years old that helps me. And so that's the way that we found that we can get them through there quickly and calmly. And so that's how we do it. I've got an SO4 and I can close that up and process those calves pretty easy and pretty quickly. But I've had to adapt that to what I've had. Is that the best way to do it? I'm not sure, but in my case, it's the best way with the resources that I had to do it. And so that's until I get a better way. That's how I'm doing it. Yes, ma'am.
What's a calf table?
So calf table is a smaller chute that restrains a calf, and then it has a pivot point where you can put them on their side and then do all the processing. So again, in my way of thinking, again, that's a lot of metal, and so the stuff that's metal is immovable, and there's a lot of potential for not only people to get hurt, but calves to get hurt in a chute like that. And so if you don't use it properly, there's potential for bruising, there's potential for even more injuries, for people getting their hands in the wrong places and so forth. So that can be more stressful. Again, a calf table used properly, it can go pretty quick and pretty well. And again, there's neither, not making a judgment either way, just remembering that there's pros and cons to both ways of doing that. And it depends on your situation, what resources you have available to you. You get any other handling stuff or issues or?
Is there a brand you recommend for the calf table? Looking at several different ones.
I'd just try them all out and see, what kind of has the functionality. I like one that's simpler. Like for the larger chutes, I'm fortunate enough to work with NCBA, and I go to that conference and they've got, 40 acres of chutes and all kinds of stuff. And so I can kind of go and look at all of those different brands of chutes. And there's some that have some really cool bells and whistles and stuff, but that's also, if you look at them, that's also a lot of different parts that can break. And my personal choice on a big chute is an SO4. I use a Preferred SO4. If you look at that chute, there's nothing on there that's really going to wear out. It's big enough that I can trick test bulls, and it's small enough that I can process small calves in, with the little tricks that they have to adjust them. If you're processing large numbers, obviously there's, hydraulic chute is going to, really, really save you some wear and tear and so forth. I think every chute has its own pros and cons, and you've kind of really got to study them. For me, I kind of like the simpler things that I know are going to be lower maintenance, and so kind of looking at them and seeing how they'll kind of fit for my use. So, I'm here today just, because I truly believe in this cattle handling. I'm not here to sell you anything. We are asked in the beef business, and I used to be an extension, I used to do this, and, and in sales, we're asked or at least shown a lot of ways that we can put a lot of money in these cattle. Whether that's vaccines, whether that's implants, whether that's, the genetics, the genomic tests, BVD PI testing. There's a lot of ways that we can spend a lot of money on these cattle. But I'll probably argue that low stress stockmanship and that proper cattle handling is the only thing that's free that I think will pay you dividends. I mean, I really do. I think that it truly does. The research shows it. The practical application of that low stress handling shows that's probably the thing that you probably will get the most benefit and most return for your time and your money doing. So
would you have a separate alley up to these calf tables?
Right. Yeah, it's a narrower alley because again, if you think about that's probably what a 32 inch alley there. Those calves are turning around in there. you know, and kind of the same principles. You don't want to overload it. You don't want to, you know, because then calves start jumping on each other, and that's when you start getting injuries and wrecks. So you want a narrower alley for those calves for sure.
Yeah, so Dean, you might want to briefly speak on, and I'll be the guinea pig. I've been behind a gate, a solid gate, got kicked, sent me 4 feet back because I couldn't see him,
right.
how close he was. But you might speak to placement to reduce getting kicked or those kind of situations where you can get smashed in a gate.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Just don't do it. No, you've always
my plan.
right. Yeah, so just be cognizant of the type of cattle, what their flight zone is, you know, how they're acting. Like these heifers were, you know, are pretty sticky, you know, so we had to get up close to them and touch them to put pressure. But you'll be able to sense that, you know, those cows that are going to have potential to kick you, and it can happen at any time. Even the gentlest one can if you scare them or surprise them. You know, so just being cognizant of your position in relation to gates and how you're pushing them and stuff is really important.
Like when you're in the crowd pen, you know, I've always been taught get close.
Right.
Because if they kick you,
they can't build up enough. Yeah. Just like being in a good bar fight. Yeah.
Get in there, or be far enough away that you're out.
That you can escape them. Yeah. Yeah. No. So just be cognizant of your position in relation to them.
We had a nephew who was helping push in cattle into the tub, and the cow hit the, you know, just backing up, hit the gate, and it caught him right in the eye, and it bled pretty good.
Right.
So I was trying to teach them to keep their arms in front of them and bent, so they're not, you got a little cushion there too.
Right. Yeah. No, that's another good point. You know, and as you know, in this business, in this lifestyle, stuff changes in an instant. You know, when accidents happen, you never predict it, right? I mean, it's just something that you're just doing normally, and just one little factor changed. You know, that horse blew up, or you got your spur hung up in the end of your rope, or something happens like that you're not predicting. And so just trying to, and I think that's part of the intent of this program, is just to be cognizant of you know, that stuff is going to happen. And so being aware of how you react to it and what you do after that is really, really important.
Yeah, because those gate deals, I mean, about every time you touch them, you're going to get swatted. So it just depends on how big the animal is.
Right.
Or give them, I would like not close it till they're well past the gate.
Anything over here?
Horror stories, we got them. So sale barns are probably the worst place in terms of those kind of situations. There was a gal that was killed at a sale barn in Salina where she put an animal in the ring and it bolted back on her, and she was behind that closed gate, and it literally smashed her. And she was a smaller person, but just smashed her back against the wall and killed her. And you get all varieties. So if you ever find yourself working a sale barn, I mean, you don't have these. You have all across the board, and maybe getting comfortable reading an animal that's bluffing, you know, or not bluffing. I always take the safe way and assume they're not bluffing, but you don't want to test that or antagonize that for sure.
Right. You know, and always be thinking about an escape route. You know, how do you get out of a situation? You know, and that's, you know, if you're getting in a tub, which you probably shouldn't be doing, but sometimes we do. You know, thinking about how do we get out of there. Thinking about that ahead of time, you know, is really, really important. You know, we had a situation at a sale barn where when they unloaded a bull that was a little trotty, they didn't give him enough space to get away to where they had closed that gate behind him. And they went in and closed that gate, and that bull was back around on top of him before he could get out of there. And so, you know, just being cognizant of that stuff. You know, again, a lot of times we're in a hurry. We've got 83 things to do and time to do about 12 of them, you know, but, you know, being smart about stuff, especially in a situation that can end your life, is really prudent.
Some of the
Yeah. Bless you.
Me, these cattle are really nice, and I would rather have cattle like this.
Right.
But in reality, in the real world, not everybody's cattle are going to be nice like these cattle.
Right.
And when you're working with other people's cattle and they're not so nice,
Right.
is it better to, okay, let's say you want to move them in here, and you have, let's say, 50 head. Is it better to work with them like 5 at a time as opposed? I mean, because these cattle are nice, and you said
Right.
bring them in here as much as
Right.
the alley will hold, which I knew that.
Right.
But wild cattle, do you work with them a little bit at a time too?
So wild cattle will have more of a herding instinct, and so they'll be more agitated if they're alone. So you certainly want to keep them in manageable size groups, for sure, and don't break them up as much. But that is a good strategy. And so, like dealing in a situation like this with wild cattle, I may be able to do all of that stuff from the outside of this pen. Whereas if I'm in here with wild cattle, they're either going to come through me, eat me up, or I'm not going to be able to relieve that pressure. Because remember, if you remember, I talked about not only the application of pressure, but that relief of pressure. I can't get far enough away to to relieve that pressure. So they're always under pressure. They're always agitated. The other thing is working them on horseback. Working them on horseback, you're a little more mobile and a little easier to get away from them. So when we talk about the size of a bud box, for working on foot, about 12 foot wide is as narrow as you want it, but 12 foot wide works really well by about 20 foot deep, which I think this is a little deeper than that, but that's about the right. But if you're working them on horseback through there, if you got some cattle that have a little more flight to them, and you're doing this because you can do this on horseback as well, you want at least an alley that's 14 to 16 foot wide, so that again you can relieve that pressure. And kind of an interesting, another neat quote that I heard Kurt Pate say. I don't know if you remember it, Marcy, from last year, but you've heard that a mule is like a horse, only more so. He says a Brahma is like a cow, only more so.
And those cows down there were a little flightier.
Yeah, and so if you really think about it, there's a lot of wisdom in that, and that she's going to be a lot more responsive, those type of cattle. I'm not picking on a Brahma breed because they're really good cattle, but they're going to have more flight to them, and so you've got to be able to adjust how you handle them and how you put and relieve that pressure. The principles are still the same, but you're going to have to use different strategies.
Unless you raise duck and stock, which Craig's not here. And Kurt said just don't even buy anything.
Right.
It doesn't apply. So for time's sake, I think we'll head back, but let's sure appreciate being
Yep.
in his zone.
Thank you very much.
We are going to take a little quiz, and then we'll move into the wildfire safety course with Dr. Cram. So come in, get a drink.